America is obsessed with true crime, and it's an undeniable fact. While we all aim to be perceived as good in today's world, we often feed off the darkness of others' minds from the comfort of our homes. I'm no different than the majority of Americans. I myself became interested in true crime at the ripe age of 10, watching Investigation Discovery with my mom almost every day. And since then, the majority of content I present myself with on a daily basis revolves around it. I'm even pursuing a degree in chemistry and forensics to one day make a profession out of true crime. The public's morbid fascination with true crime has pushed for an overwhelming amount of content to be created, but at what cost? Today I, Olivia Cullen, will be introducing you to a phenomenon that has been coined as the CSI effect by discussing the rise of forensic television, what the CSI effect is, and how it's affecting these real-life positions. Forensic television really began with Crime Scene Investigation, or CSI. CSI first aired on CBS Network on October 6, 2000, defying crime television by introducing forensic scientists as the protagonists, rather than police officers or lawyers. They defied the conventional crime television at the time by adding sex appeal to science, or as CSI creator Anthony Zuiker puts it, sexing it up. Surprisingly, it worked, and extremely well too, because according to Nielsen data, in 2002, CSI was ranked the #1 television series in the world, only dropping to second for the next few years. But CSI was just the beginning. As producers began to see the major success of the franchise, more forensics television began to blow up. Crime Scene Investigation got 2 more shows, New York and Miami. Then there was Without a Trace, Cold Case, Bones, Dexter. America couldn't get enough forensic television. According to 2006 weekly rating data, over 30 million people watched CSI on one night. Over 70 million people watched at least one of the 3 CSI shows, and 40 million people watched Cold Case or Without a Trace. That amasses to over 100 million people watching forensics television a week. And of the 10 most watched shows, 5 of which were of the scientific evidence in criminal cases. So why is the success of forensic television such a problem? This term CSI effect was first coined in 2002 Times article discussing the effect of forensic television on jury members. The CSI effect refers to how it is believed that forensics television is compromising the integrity of criminal trials. It's claimed that the idealized portrayal of forensic science capabilities are resulting in jurors holding higher expectations for scientific evidence in the courtroom. Where once a jury would have voted guilty, they are now acquitting in terms of lack of scientific evidence. Jurors are beginning to come into the courtroom with unrealistic expectations for quantity, quality, and availability of scientific evidence. What's causing these unrealistic expectations are the exaggerated portrayals of the investigations being shown on television. CSI creator Anthony Zuiker comments, "I think Americans know that DNA doesn't come back in 20 minutes. That there's not some magical computer that you can press and the guy's face pops up and where he lives. You think America knows that the timesheets when you're doing 1 hour of television have to be fudged a bit. Americans know that. They're smart." The problem is, it doesn't seem that everyone does know that, especially when so much of what's being shown is incorrect. These 1-hour television shows try to pack a lot in, but that's where they lose the reality. Actual crime scene investigators aren't going to walk into a room, scan a flashlight, and immediately find the evidence they need to solve the case. The cause of death is almost never determined at the crime scene, but back in the lab after an autopsy is done by a professional medical examiner. And the lab isn't just back at the station for everyone to head to after the scene. A lot of time, crime labs are separate from the police stations, meaning the evidence needs to be sent away for testing and can take time to come back. The most detrimental, incorrect portrayal in the show is that there's not always an answer, and tests more often than not come back inconclusive. Stephen Smith, Veronica Stinson, and Mark Patry from St. Mary's University Psychology Department conducted a thorough investigation into the discrepancies portrayed in CSI. They began by first analyzing the first season of both CSI and CSI Miami. The first discrepancy found was that about 73% of the scientific work portrayed in the show was done by crime scene investigators. In reality, crime scene investigators are responsible for being on the scene and collecting evidence, while the evidence is then processed and tested by specialized lab technicians. Crime scene investigators also aren't going to show up to the scene wearing high heels and fashionable outfits. They also identified 75 different scientific techniques being used in the first 2 seasons. Forensics experts were then presented with a list of 73 of these techniques with the name and a description of how they were used in the show, and asked to comment on the ones they had expertise. From this, they found that experts agreed with the techniques being used, with an average rating of 4.6 out of a 7-point scale on realism, but the reliability of these techniques were quite low, only getting an average score of 1.9. The experts gave the scientific portrayals an overall score of 2.5 out of 7 for the accuracy of these televised portrayals. Now that you know the discrepancies, how is it affecting real-life professions? The public having higher expectations for thorough investigations isn't what is worrying forensics professionals, but the fact that the expectations they hold are often out of reach. When commenting on the issue, John Grossman, the Undersecretary of Forensic Science and Technology of Massachusetts, says, "Juries now expect high-level science to be done on cases where we don't have the resources to do them, and in many cases, the science simply doesn't exist." When forensics experts testify in trial, they're feeling an added pressure of living up to these televised expectations, even if they can't meet them. Honorable Donald Shelton, the Chief Judge of Washington County, Michigan, says forensics experts are often coming to testify with useless tests, unimportant to the case, simply to show the jury they went the extra CSI mile. These tests often have no implication of innocent or guilty, but the jury expects to see them for credibility. Not only are these tests useless to the case, but forensic science in America is already extremely underfunded. Having these professionals show arbitrary tests while testifying to simply establish their credibility is taking time, money, and resources away from cases that need them. For the cases where an overabundance of scientific evidence is not present, we're seeing that juries are acquitting. For example, Robert Durst was acquitted after not only presenting significant evidence of his methodical involvement, but admitting to killing and dismembering his neighbor Morris Black. Durst's defense lawyers brought in jury selection consultant Robert Hirschhorn to create a jury where over 70% of the participants were familiar viewers of CSI or related shows. The defense used this knowledge to their advantage by driving home the story that Durst had accidentally shot Black in the face out of self-defense, and in a traumatized out-of-body experience dismembered his body and disposed of the pieces. The head of Morris Black was never recovered, and without the scientific evidence to support whether the face wound was consistent with self-defense or not, Robert Durst was acquitted. This trial was in 2003, and since then it has become apparent in the media that this man is a suspected serial killer. He currently awaits trial for the murder of his best friend Susan Berman, which will resume session in April 2021. Could this all have been prevented? This all just scratches the surface of the phenomenon that has become known as the CSI effect. From the rise of forensic television came increased public knowledge into the world of criminal investigation, testing the integrity of our court systems. Now that I've introduced you to this phenomenon, I hope that next time you're watching crime television, you can detect fact versus fiction and avoid falling for the CSI effect.